something a bit different from our usual flavor. How the heck does this even happen? I got banned from playing Baldur's Gate. My uncle got me into Dungeons & Dragons. I thought he'd find this game cool and showed him the combat mechanics of the game. Only the combat mechanics and a few different classes. I didn't show him story or anything. Well, he went and Googled it and told my parents I'm playing mature content disguised as a game with gays and lesbians. I always wondered what those kind of discoveries look like for homophobes. Wonder how my nephew is enjoying that game. No. No! No! What have I done? I've shown my nephew something that is gay! Ow! They made me delete the game, and for a while they'll probably be occasionally checking all the games on my PC. Alright guys, let's come up with solutions. How does this guy covertly play Baldur's Gate 3? We're not gonna let those people win. The gays aren't taking an L today. This is the story of how I joined into a game suffering from tonal whiplash, mechanical issues, and GM indecision about midway through. I was working a job that allowed me to consistently get weekends off and preparing to transition to a new job that allowed for more free time. And as a result, ended up getting invited to a game by an old friend. I'm gonna call him John. Now, John was an alternating game master with my former group, and an old friend of mine, but he was never much one for knowing the mechanics of the game, and sometimes got a bit absorbed into his stories rather than those that his party actually wanted to tell. He ended up getting kicked out of the old group by one of the people whose home we regularly played at, mostly because he was too loud for the host's parents. We were teenagers at the time. Back then, I'd only played D&D 4th edition. Oh, sorry. D&D 4th edition! Apparently there's like one gal in my audience who regularly comments that she loves this game. You know, no hate to you, dude. You do you. Anyway, we'd only played D&D 4th edition with him, and given that 5e had been out for a while by this point, I figured he must have adjusted for the new system, and honestly, it's been years. Surely he's had time to improve. Apparently, his group was even set up to stream, as they created content elsewise, and the people of importance as follows. Myself, playing a multi-classing Goliath, more on the particulars there in a second, John, the Dungeon Master, Tom, our tech guy and cleric, Jack, our monk, Pauline, our bard and Tom's wife, and Ben as the wizard. Now, as I came in a bit late, I got a quick rundown of what was going on. Essentially, our party were all born under a particular celestial event. We're destined to serve as warriors that would either save the world from a horrid fate at the hands of an ancient dragon spirit, or bring about its doom. I love that D&D is the only place where star signs actually matter. I'm a Libra, by the way. Anyway, my character in particular started as a ranger, a huntsman that had left a life of piracy after his crew and lover had perished, deciding adventuring was not for him, and reluctantly joined the group, more so for the sake of survival than grandeur. I made him to be a bit of a reluctant, comic relief character that could take some hits for the party, emphasizing on dual wielding rather than range combat, so as to serve as a pseudo-tank. Arguably, there were better classes to do this with Goliath, but I thought it would be neat to be a ranger rather than an expected barbarian or fighter, but it will matter little, as you'll soon see. There were two reasons I went with the backstory I had. One, to prevent things from getting too centralized regarding a character that had just been introduced and was there for combat support. I didn't want to take any spotlight from the other players that had been there longer. I was mostly there for combat rather than roleplay, something I had made clear from the beginning. It's not that I can't provide it, especially given I DM regularly, but I felt like it would be unfair to the others. Well, John would not have that. He ended up not only digging further into the backstory with his NPCs than I had cared for, something I openly advised against out of session, but indicated that not only was my Goliath's love interest alive, he had been imprisoned by a great old one using the Necronomicon. Alright everyone, I am ready for some wholesome D&D. What is going on in the sleeping city of Ule? Here. Okay, stop, DM! Who is DM? There is no DM here. It's you, dude. I know it's you.
Really? I thought you'd like it. I'm expanding out your backstory. Look, I wrote you a backstory. I told you I didn't want it focused on too much. But hey, even if you did want to focus on it, why completely derail the whole thing into this Call of Cthulhu stuff without me even, consenting to it? Look, I don't know. I thought you'd just be into the bigger, more prodding narrative. It'll have, long-term effects on the campaign and stuff. Yeah, look, I love Lovecraft as much as the next guy, but just ask next time, okay? Okay. Well, it's not all bad. It's not all bad. Of all the authors you could adapt, he's definitely not the worst. As long as he didn't grab his famous racism, I think we're all good. We're all good. Right?
I ended up rolling with this at first as I didn't want to kill his momentum, especially while on stream. An RPG horror story you can watch, you say? But this did end up resulting in what was originally an interesting plot point that shifted my Goliath to becoming a warlock? Originally being the keyword, though my annoyances with this aside, this isn't the problem. John did not have an original thought in his body when it came to his campaign, and was off-swayed by the most recent pop culture thing of the week. John is me! I'm sure this guy is doing something particularly egregious, but I will say, if I'm really loving something at that moment, then I'm probably going to make a whole plot line based off of it. I mean, immediately after watching The Owl House, I made Marin and Amory, 2 characters based off the lovely main ship of The Owl House. Immediately after playing Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty, I made Yumi based off a major character from that game. Look, I'm a reactionary rip-offer. What can I say? Guilty as charged. His ripping off, though, resulted in his campaign becoming disjointed, and the attention of the players to be split between various plot points or potential threats, rather than focusing on the goal. 1 minute we're in Ravnica from Magic the Gathering, the next we're in the TARDIS from Doctor Who, then in the Witchlight Carnival, then we're in Ravenloft, specifically Har Akir, the ancient Egyptian-inspired setting. While there was some cohesion between 1 or 2 sessions, a lot of the time we were just thrown from one place to the other and given way too many threads to follow. Okay, yeah, that's a problem. That's the new player experience when you try Destiny 2! I'm all for giving players some agency, but if you give 15 different plot threads, it can become too overwhelming for players to follow, which was the case here, as we'd often spend hours trying to figure out where to go or what to do, which would often result in a few of us losing attention, as particularly Jack and Pauline would debate endlessly on which trail to follow. I'm also guilty of pulling from a source or two when homebrewing, but who isn't? Though there is only so much you can do when you're trying to run a live stream game that's supposed to be semi-homebrewed without making people roll their eyes while tuning in every other sentence being an out-of-universe reference or pull. Sentai, Stranger Things, Doctor Who, Warehouse 13, and, oh yeah, Godzilla! I have favorites. Those were just a few of the things he pulled from without me getting too far on a tangent on that. But that wasn't even the problem. The real problem is John still doesn't mechanically know how to run Dungeons & Dragons. His checks were obviously impossible for characters of 5e scaling. Or he made some non-committal that's obvious the players expected to just make the check, which begs the question of why he'd have them roll in the first place. I could roll exceptionally well, getting scores of 20 plus at lower levels for seemingly middle-of-the-road tasks and just fail spectacularly. We're talking about simple tasks like tracking or tying knots.
Seriously, what does that even... That feels unnecessary. Huh? Intruder! That feels extra unnecessary.
The numbers needed seemed akin to Pathfinder, which would be understandable if he ever really GM Pathfinder or was willing to, adapt to that system at least. Then the scaling on the numbers would make sense. Everyone just got a little frustrated with it at one point or another. Honestly, it was the little things that added up, plus the fact that my rolls just didn't seem to matter, that boiled over. My partner took me aside and noted that I was seeming upset after games and noticed I was drinking more as a result. And at that point, that was when I brought up, I knew I just wasn't having fun. Dude, if you're unlocking the alcoholism achievement because of Dungeons & Dragons, yeah, you're not having fun, man. I eventually quit under the excuse that I've been too busy at my job, in part because of new responsibilities for my new job, causing me to lose my available time that I had, and the only availability I had after that would require me to play on a different day anyway. John wanted to try to accommodate, but the other players couldn't adjust, and I made it clear I didn't want them to. I just didn't want to ruin the friendship over getting frustrated with his DMing. But he didn't take critique to his DMing well previously, and I doubted this would be different. Since then, John, every couple of weeks, will still message me asking when I can play again, saying he missed playing or hanging out. I've advised that's not likely I'll be able to play, and legitimately can't do so on the day of the week his group does, as it's when my original group plays, which he knows. But I think the thing that makes me more upset is that I still live near this guy, like really close, and my current job would allow him to drop by and visit at any point. But he just doesn't. I still occasionally pop into the server to share things or chat with folks, and that initial campaign has ended, and they've moved on to a new campaign. I care for the players, but the game was actively harming my mental health, disregard of the DM for the players' wishes, and the lack of actual direction, and I just don't have the energy to deal with that right now. Yup, and thus the plight of many a sandbox campaign. Look, I'm not trying to hate on sandbox, but if you don't do it right, it's gonna feel like this. Directionless, aimless, and worst of all, pointless, where the party just don't really know what to do and don't have any enthusiasm for the things that you do present for them. I made a whole skit about the backstory thing, and I know I already talked about the ripping things off thing, but I'll talk about it again in more detail because I was kind of joking before. Look, taking inspiration, blatantly ripping off, isn't just fine, it's good. It's good to rip things off from stuff that you enjoy. It makes your world more personalized to you. It's stuff that you love, and therefore, you're gonna love DMing it in it more. That's why I rip things off from Baldur's Gate 3 or Critical Role or Cyberpunk or The Owl House. These are things I love. However, my qualifier is, if it breaks immersion, it is a problem. And here, we see that problem in full force. If your players or audience can't focus on what you're actually trying to tell with your story because of all of your ripoffs and references, then we have an issue. Though I will say, the rest of the party stuck with this guy, so who knows, maybe this guy does have something going for him, even if this player probably should just walk away and find another game. I just had the final session of a major arc of my Dungeons & Dragons campaign. I just don't think it landed. Combat was solid, but the scenery just didn't land. My players felt none of the impact, and I feel like I didn't put enough oomph into it. But that's just part of the life. Unless you have CzePeku Scenes. This video is sponsored by CzePeku Scenes, some of the best illustrations that you can get for the backgrounds and theming of your tabletop role-playing game. If you've seen CzePeku's maps, you no doubt recognize how gorgeous they are. But if you really want to spice things up and show your players an even more stylized view of these locations, CzePeku Scenes are for you. Starting at just the $1 tier, you can get access to incredible illustrations for so many of CzePeku's best maps, from this gorgeous Yggdrasil village to the haunting vampire mansion beneath a blood moon. Not only that, but you can also subscribe at higher tiers to get all the variants, as well as amazing animated versions of these scenes that you have been seeing throughout the video. I didn't get into CzePeku Scenes when I was starting out my new D&D campaign, and I know for a fact that some of these could have really bailed my butt out. So guys, I definitely recommend you don't make the mistake that I did. If you guys are interested in the incredible CzePeku Scenes, then you can head down into the description down below where you can find their website and their Patreon so that you can sign up. As always, supporting our sponsors does support us. Thank you so much to CzePeku for once again sponsoring the show. And without further ado, I'm going to turn back into an animated rat so that we can get back to the video. This is more of a funny story than a horror story, but I still think you'll enjoy it. In 2020, our longtime tabletop role-playing game group was forced to transition from an in-person game to Roll20 for reasons we all know. I actually kind of like the isolation. Oh, anyway, 2 of our players couldn't stand playing online and so bowed out until we were able to meet in person again. When we started playing in person again, we were a couple of sessions into a Rifts campaign. The returning players rolled up a Tabaxi Burster and a Cyborg Bounty Hunter, respectively. The Burster's introduction to the party went smoothly. She approached the party and said she'd overheard us talking about going to Tolkien, which is where she needed to go for backstory reasons, and asked to tag along. Yep, no problem, hop in the APC. Then, we get to the Cyborg's introduction. He's in the forest, hunting down a rogue mage for a bounty. He finds his target in an encampment of demons and cultists, working on some kind of device they built around a ley line nexus. The GM says there's far too many enemies for him to take on alone, hinting that he should go to the nearest town and recruit backup, like, you know, the rest of the party. But no, Cyborg has a plan.
All right. This place is completely surrounded. Luckily for you, though, you saw some ne'er-do-wells back at camp. They may be able to... Nah. Nah? What do you mean, nah? Nah, I'm not gonna do it. I have a plan. Oh, God. It only involves one spell. Now, of course, it's just a single spell. Placed in the exact right place. Yeah, always in the exact right spot. I've already done all the measurements. Yeah, I know you did. We have to check if its rules is written, man, before you just... It's Fireball. What? I'm gonna cast Fireball. That's the whole plan, is just that? Do you really ever need anything else? I guess not.
He asks if he's within range to shoot the device with his laser rifle. The Game Master confirms he is. The cyborg shoots the device with a maximum power laser burst and does enough damage to destroy the device. This was, it turns out, the resulting detonation rips the Nexus open, killing all the cultists and emitting a shockwave that the cyborg barely manages to outrun. As he makes out of the forest, a massive rift has opened and something is coming through. Something with a lot of tentacles. The party, seeing this from the nearby town, approaches with our ship to figure out what's going on and run into the cyborg. We ask if he knows what's happening. He's like, nope, I was just minding my own business and the rift opened for no reason. Man, crazy how that happens.
Did you ever think your little cyborg might be a liar?
What ensued was a genuinely fun combat where we were shooting missiles from the guns mounted on the APC, making drive rolls to avoid getting stomped by tentacles, and my dragon hatchling playing spotter at one point, having to catch the APC in mid-air after it got swiped by a tentacle. We didn't so much kill the creature as delay it coming through until the rift closed on its own, but in the end the town was saved and our APC only needed moderate repairs. Moral of the story, sometimes players make dumb, impulsive decisions, and it makes for a really fun session where you fight Cthulhu instead of 2d6 cultists and an evil wizard. That is showing the strength of a talented game master. There's a couple scenarios that I can see being the truth here. Number one is that the Cthulhu fight was always the goal, and the 2d6 cultists were just the setup for the Cthulhu fight, which is smart improv. Or the game master just came up with this on the spot, which is even smarter improv. Both of these work, though I think the former is going to be more common. I really don't like it when YouTubers frame improv as uprooting everything that you had planned for the session, because that's stupid. You don't need to do that most of the time. In fact, you shouldn't do that most of the time. Framing your plans around the players is a sign of a great dungeon master. This is a sitch that could have really screwed with the game master, as I joked about in the skit, but they were ready and had an even stronger session because they leaned into what the players were doing. I joined an LFG game that was advertised as an experienced dungeon master running an open-ended, expansive homebrew world. Never heard that one before. Anyway, yeah, cool. However, I notice immediately that the Dungeon Master is moving really fast. When asking questions about the type of game we want to play, the Dungeon Master consistently rushes through people's answers and only allows 1 or 2 people to talk before moving on to the next question. This intro call only lasts about 10 minutes total, and we were rushed out before we could even really get to talk to the other players. I wasn't too concerned yet, as we had a proper Session 0 scheduled. When we get to Session 0, things go on pretty similarly. We go over basic ground rules for the game and get some basic lore of the world, 2 major locations, and the idea that alchemy will play a large role in the story, but not much else. We then go over our characters extremely quickly without getting much of a chance to discuss our roleplay goals or story reasons, why our player characters end up together. Session 0 ends after 40 minutes with no plot hooks, not even a vague idea of the story's direction being given to us. The closest thing was the info that the starting town's university may not be as it appears. The Dungeon Master promises he has something really good planned for Session 1 though. Alchemy is going to be important. Alchemy is going to be important. Alchemy. What is wrong with them? I think they're trying to tell us that, I don't know, alchemy is supposed to be important? Yeah, dude, I can tell. But are we going to do this for the entire 40 minutes? Seriously? What if I told you that alchemy is going to be important? I guess they're just trying to make this feel like a real Session 0 without having any of the, substance. God, I have kids, man. I'm getting a new D&D group together right now, and in just the pitch, I give the players a small write-up that took me like 20 minutes to do, and 8 backstory hooks that they can use if they're interested. You don't need to do exactly that, but if you're gonna burn 40 minutes of your player's time, you need to give them more than just Alchemy is important. Session 1 rolls around a week later. When I arrive, I'm told a player dropped out after Session 0, leaving just 3 player characters. Wonder why. No big deal, but I would have appreciated a heads up. The session starts with an individual scene where our monk is transporting a box of valuable medical supplies. Monk gets a couple of roleplay lines with an NPC before they're swarmed by a dozen plus goblins. We're all level 1, by the way. After an extended combat, Monk is almost dead. His allies are dead, or nearly so, and the medical supplies are lost. Kind of a bummer to start on, but let's see where things go. By the way, combats usually last 40 minutes. What were you guys doing the whole time? We then switch to a scene in a new university with my character and an NPC from my backstory. We're robbing a book from the university. After some brief roleplay, the heist quickly goes south. I use a scroll to teleport NPC friend and the stolen goods out. And I'm left to fight multiple clockwork soldiers. I put up an alright fight, but I'm KO'd after taking out a single enemy. We then switch to the third player character, Artificer, who is brand new to Dungeons & Dragons. After sitting in silence for almost 90 minutes, I could tell he was getting a little bit annoyed. Scene starts with Artificer, a doctor, giving his dysentery at said university. Despite the situation, Artificer has some great roleplay and came across really well. Unfortunately, after only a minute or so, he gets cut off by an NPC accusing him of plagiarizing his dissertation. Just by happenstance, was the Artificer named James?
And that's how we know the body standards we have in the gym come from What's that music? What's going on?
Defensible artistic choice.
No.
Be defended.
No!
This is a normal thing to do.
No!
An in-character argument breaks out before the NPC drops dead due to evident poisoning. Guards rush in and arrest Artificer, who is genuinely confused. This whole scene took less than 15 minutes. The session ends with 2 player characters in jail and 1 on the brink of death elsewhere. We all get stomped in our individual scenes, haven't said a word to one another in character, and still have no idea what the story is supposed to be. I was tempted to talk to Dungeon Master about this, and didn't want to give uninvited feedback before the game had even started. It was not a great impression regardless. Now today, I checked the Discord and find that the campaign server has been deleted. I tried to message Dungeon Master, but he's unfriended me. All of this without a word of explanation. This is obviously very frustrating, especially since I like DM and the other players, and wanted to give the game an honest shot. Sadly, this looks like where it'll end. I like the individual opening, when each player character gets a little moment to shine, communicate who they are, and set up the story for themselves. I did this in my homebrew campaign, and I did this twice in both of my actual plays. You can see me do it, and you can see that it doesn't take the whole session. Each character gets 10-15 minutes to themselves because having characters be separated off like this, especially when combat is involved, means the other people are just sitting on their hands. 10 to 15 minutes individual roleplay, that's all good. But combat can take up to 40 plus minutes, and frankly, dedicating that much time can get really annoying, especially if you don't do it for everyone. Seriously, Artificer getting screwed over there would make me pissed off too. I'm glad you like the DM, and this is the kind of thing where I would give it a session 2. Like, try out what the DM has after we're all united, but having it end off like this, and obviously deleting the server, it's killing the campaign, and maybe it was for the best. Been lurking, but I thought I would come forward with my horror story, also known as half of the entire first Dungeons & Dragons campaign I was in. So I find a group, shortly into my freshman year of college. An acquaintance in some of my classes had a dungeon master with a homebrew setting needing players. I go into this ready to learn the ropes, prepare with my shiny new character, a changeling rogue, which was still in Unearthed Arcana at the time. Wonderful taste, by the way. Coming into this seemed like a pretty straight-laced campaign with some funny bits, but mostly about destroying Nazi elves. Literally, they were called Nazi elves and talked with a German accent.
Hans, are we the baddies?
Alongside me was Aurelia, the High Elven Druid, the last of her tribe after a paladin massacre, who held their spirits in a magic tome of wisdom. Her player became my roommate, and was actually a player at my table now. We bonded over this ordeal. John, the human paladin, whose crowning achievement is killing 8 people with a shovel in one combat and being a good dad to a runt gold dragon. He wasn't around a ton. Willow, the human fighter, who was a sailor and was only around for some sessions. Dev, the human monk, who was blind. They were also only around for some sessions. Patterns emerging.
Sir, you called in need of aid. Ah, my friend, wielder of the legendary Leviathan axe, thank you for coming. You and your comrades Where are your comrades? My comrades. They... my friend. Did they perish in battle? Tell me what happened. No. They work the closing shift. Their boss is keeping them 30 minutes after hours. We've been waiting for so long. And there's traffic. They will not be attending this adventure. I am sorry. We will mourn them together. Thank you, my friend. Thank you.
Has this ever happened to you? Well, if it has, too bad, bitch. Marask, the dwarf fighter, who was the brother of an acquaintance of mine and was a decent guy, he had a good Russian accent for his character. The acquaintance, who was the lead in these shenanigans. The acquaintance who invited me was interesting. Her character was a naive, half-elven wizard named Urethra, as in the bladder duct. This character's signature trait was that when she met someone for the first time, she would... harass them. She would harass them. Great. It did not matter who it was. This led to some fights, frantic appeasement from the rest of the party, or a very disturbing encounter with a reoccurring shopkeeper that was over 80 years old, who was now very into this young, naive elf, quote-unquote. On top of that, this character's focus was an actual... a bottom plug.
I gotta remove the butt plug. The bottom plug. I have to remove the bottom plug from the bottom hole at the bottom.
She would drop a flap in her pants and moon the targets to cast fireball from her bum. This was only exacerbated when she lost her focus, tried to carve a new one, and messed up the why is that so hard to say? Magicification of it, making it a sentient, talking bottom plug focus. It was still used. That's pretty funny. The DM technically told us that if we were uncomfortable with it, it would need to be changed. But everyone else was a new player and a new freshman, and the tone of it was very much, if you said something, you were a mood killer. The acquaintance and the dungeon master were good friends too. Plus, the DM was a whole different ordeal, and no one was brave enough to speak up. The dungeon master would be constantly making things... grape-like. Yeah, grape-like. And intimate. Traumatic things would regularly happen to Aurelia, including advances towards her. The player had to make it so that when Aurelia would have something traumatic happen, her soul would go into a book of ancestral spirits, trying to avoid the DM continuing. Several times we were sex-pollened into stuff? The party fell into a pit of incubuses once, and Nat 20 made someone break a minotaur horn so hard it powderized into the air and created an aphrodisiac in a room of 15 people, most of which failed to save. Like hallucinations? Oh! I can't even blame that on an asexual thing. I think I'm just stupid. Though, to be fair to myself, which I always like to be, last time I checked, Minotaur horns don't do that. Though I think it would explain Sam Regal's reaction to Minotaurs. It was not a fun thing to roleplay with no warning, or anything at all. The cherry on top was, I was once IRL scratching at the side of my chest, and the DM started teasing me about how I was clearly touching myself, insisting upon it when I denied it. He also just gave me some bad vibes. Really? Why? I wonder why. There is no satisfying ending. What happened was that the campaign had to go online and did not survive more than a session or two like that. I found 2 new campaigns a year later, both hosted by the same group of people, and had a blast. One was a Greek-inspired campaign, and the other was Mind Flayers, trying to blow up the sun in revenge for the death of their elder brain, which they actually succeeded with, and we had to deal with. How? I've watched Kurzgesagt, okay? I know what happens when the sun's gone. It's messed up. These are the wildest good Christian folks I've ever met, and they're proud of it. Looking back, the campaign in general was a bit strange. Advantage was +5 to roll, and disadvantage was a -5 to rolls. Money was handled weirdly, and damage was always a crit. Sneak attack meant next to nothing, which was fun as a rogue. The only alright thing to come out of it was, I met my roommate, and she's a decent roommate, and a relatively good player. Yeah, so that's a lot. The creepy girl with the bottom plug was what I thought the story would be about, and I was gonna go on a lecture about how the dungeon master wasn't putting an end to this and pressuring people, even indirectly, into playing with someone that clearly made them uncomfortable. But man, the DM is worse. The DM is way worse. I feel suckered. I was pulled into a Femcel story and found an even worse incel story. It's not the worst we've ever seen, from creepy romantic advances, as sad as that is to say. But this is clearly a college DM who's taking advantage of the fact that everyone in the group is a freshman. Look, when you are right out of the boat in college, you don't know anyone, you don't know what you're doing, and sometimes people are gonna take advantage of that. It's why I only made 2 friends my entire college experience. And okay, yeah, maybe you don't need to go that far, but do be aware of when someone is taking advantage of you like this, because it's toxic, it's bad, and unfortunately, I've seen it happen in more than just D&D games. And that's a wrap. If you guys enjoyed, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of our content, then you can check out our Tavern Adjacent D&D podcast. We are back. It's linked in the cards. New episode with fall cosplay. It was a lot of fun. While you're there, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern to get more of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down in the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment banned from the gate to let me know you made it to the end of the video. Hey, by the way, if you have your own horror stories, you can send them directly to us. There's an email down in the description down below. Send your stories that way for a chance to be featured in one of these videos. But hey, even if you don't have any stories, in essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.
What have I done? I have shown my son. It's not his son, it's his nephew. Dang it. What have I done?